Bloody Maryz, a queer horror movie podcast.
This episode, we're talking about Psycho.
I'm Pazuzu. Nice to meet you, Alex.
And I'm Annie Wilkes, hobbling you with a hammer, Sean.
We are two queer housemates and nerds and horror fans. We live together in Hackney. Our pronouns are they, them.
Some content notes for this episode. We'll be talking about some trans stuff, and this film could be read as quite transphobic, so we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about murder and violence. We'll be swearing, and there will be huge spoilers, like from the offset.
The biggest
ones. So make sure you watch the film first. Psycho came out in 1960. It was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and was based on a book by Robert Bloch from 1959, which is of the same name. Hitchcock became aware of the book because his assistant, Peggy Robinson, recommended the book to him, and he loved it. He bought the rights for it, and he also bought all of the copies of the book to prevent anyone reading it and getting any spoilers. That is wild. The executives at Paramount weren't really on board with anything about the film, so Hitchcock offered to fund it himself and take a 60% stake in the film rather than his usual director's fee, which ended up getting him a lot more money than he would normally have got because it was kind of a sleeper runaway sensation. Indeed. Because he wanted to that's easy for me to say. He was because he was just after cock. Let me start again. Because he was because he was eager to he was eager to cut costs.
No.
Easy for me to say. I'm off to a flying start here. He filmed the film in black and white, and part of this was to save on money, to save on cost. Part of this was because he was really inspired by Les Diaboliques, which we watched recently, and also because he thought that it would help to avoid gore if it was in black and white. For the blood, in the very famous, perhaps the most well-known scene from any horror film, the shower scene, chocolate syrup was used in lieu of sort of fake blood because the colour was stood out more on black and white film. After the film was released, he God, I can't speak. He released his cock. After the film, he received an angry letter from a father who'd said that having seen Les Diaboliques, his daughter became scared of having a bath. And after seeing Psycho, she became scared of having a shower. So he apparently just replied saying, send her to the dry cleaners. So Janet Leigh, who played Marion, apparently she was the only like big name actress in this in order to keep the costs down. And she was only filming for 3 weeks, and one of those weeks was the shower scene. So a lot of time and energy went into that scene, including like the effects of looking up at the shower head. There were various kind of technical ways around that. But she said that she didn't find it a traumatic scene to film, but she realized on watching the finished version how vulnerable a woman is in the shower. And apparently from that point on, she only ever had baths until her dying day. Yeah. I know. Interestingly, it was also the first US film to show a flushing toilet on screen, which is when she flushes away all of her ripped up mathematics. Yes. So the original novel, also called Psycho, was loosely inspired by the killer Ed Gein. Ed Gein also was the inspiration, or one of the inspirations, behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Gein. What did I say? Gein. Gein. No, it's Gein. You're right. Gein. Gein Bean. So it was inspired by killer Ed Gein. So Ed Gein he I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a more explicit kind of inspiration from him. But the story of Ed Gein, did we agree on Gein?
Yeah.
Gein, okay. So there are some differences here. So Ed Gein was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Through a contemporary lens, Norman Bates has dissociative identity disorder, which is sometimes problematically referred to as split personalities. And he also engaged in necrophilia, cannibalism, wearing the skin of his victims over his own, and turning body parts into furniture. So he had a sofa that was upholstered with human skin. He made soup bowls out of skulls. In the book, Norman is very explicitly a transvestite. It's been argued that Ed Gein, motherfucker, Ed Gein, it's been argued that Ed Gein was transgender.
Because all I knew was that his mother forced him to dress up as a girl when he was little. I didn't know that he could.
Yes. It seems like he was dysphoric. And one of the key changes to the plot is at the end, it's very emphatically stated that Norman isn't a transvestite, as they say,
right, and
is it's his other personality.
Sure.
But there's a reason behind this. So the censors did want to remove the word transvestite completely from the end scene, but they proved that they had to prove that it was a clinical term, which is why he offers quite a clinical response. He's like, no, he's not transvestite. A transvestite is, and then gives kind of an explanation about the, people who get some sort of sexual arousal from dressing as a woman. Anthony Perkins has an interesting little queer story. So he plays Norman Bates. He's such a cutie. So he died in 1992 of an AIDS-related illness. He was married to a woman called Barry Berenson.
What?
Well, it does look like I've made it up, but maybe I just can't read my handwriting. No, it's Barry Berenson.
Barry.
She was very nice. So apparently, up until the age of 39, Anthony Perkins had only had relationships with men, including the movie heartthrob Tab Hunter. But then he married Barry, so I guess we could say he was bisexual, yes. And a day before the 9th anniversary of his death, his wife died on American Airlines Flight 11, which hit the North Tower in the World Trade Center.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So an interesting thing, which only struck me as interesting as the film progressed when we've just watched it, is thinking about the impact that the Hays Code had on this film. Are you familiar with the Hays Code? So, we've definitely spoken about it before, but it was basically like a ruling. It was kind of like a censorship ruling over what films were allowed to show. And it lasted from the 30s up until 1968. And this film came out in 1960. So I was interested, especially during the scene where, after the shower murder scene, when Norman is cleaning up quite meticulously. It's quite a long scene where nothing happens apart from him just cleaning up. And I was surprised that was allowed to be shown, given what I know about the Hays Code. But I'll tell you what the rules were anyway. So the rules included, so crime and immorality could never be portrayed in a positive light. So it meant that if someone did something bad or immoral, they had to be punished for it in some way. So they had to have some sort of justice. And this actually impacts one of your favorite films and one of my favorite films. So in Rebecca, which is also an Alfred Hitchcock film, they had to change the ending completely because in the book, Maxim de Winter murders Rebecca. In the film, Maxim de Winter is having an argument with Rebecca and she falls over and accidentally kills herself, or accidentally dies rather. So, and that was because they didn't want him to have to be punished at the end. Right. And apparently in The Bad Seed, which is one of your favorites, so that was apparently also based on a novel and had been a stage play.
Yeah.
So they changed the ending there. So it says here, Christine gives an overdose of sleeping pills to her dangerous sociopathic daughter, Rhoda, and Christine shoots herself, but Rhoda survives with the implication she will kill again. So that's what happens in the novel. In the film, Christina survives the suicide attempt, but Rhoda is hit by lightning or a tree or something. Yeah. So basically, there's a whole like 3 decades worth of films that have these really improbable, sort of rushed or edited moments that kind of. But the people that were impacted most by the rules, tended to be women, people of color, and queers. So some of the other rules were, let me see. So films could only present correct standards of life, which is pretty vague, but it meant that lots of filmmakers kind of shied away from showing poverty in any way, because that wasn't seen as like the ideal way of living. So in the films, the law had to be respected and upheld, and if it wasn't, they had to be punished. Nudity and overt portrayals and references to sexual behavior, even between consenting adults, could not be shown. And again, at the beginning of this, there's the suggestion that they've just had sex, because that's how it begins. These rules also impacted cartoons as well. So it was like anything that was
full murderous cartoons.
Yeah. But things like Roadrunner would always come into kind of, like, because he's always always like dropping anvils and stuff. Yeah. So, but it was always on the keen eye of the censors. So religion could never be depicted in a mocking manner, which meant with lots of these things, people just didn't show religion at all.
Yeah.
In order to avoid it. People like policemen and lawyers and priests and people who were thought to be kind of upholding morals were not allowed to be shown to be bad people, unless it was really explicit that they were like an exception to the rule. Drug use and alcohol consumption, unless there was punishment related to it, weren't supposed to be shown. Revenge wasn't allowed to be a theme in a film. And then perverse topics, this is the most interesting one, could not be discussed or depicted in any way. And the main ones about these were homosexuality and interracial relationships. And as a way around that, much like with the religion thing, where it was like, well, it's easy just not to show it, just in case we run into the censors, it basically meant that for 30 years, there weren't really many people of color cast to try and avoid these sort of rules. So yeah, it was basically this thing that, but the one that struck me as most interesting in this one, so another one is sanctity of marriage had to be upheld. They were very like Christian in their ethos. Blasphemy wasn't allowed to be shown. The United States flag was supposed to be treated with respect. Like, it's bonkers, but the most weird one is they had very strict rules about showing like detailed, kind of imitable processes around crimes, so things that someone could watch and copy from.
Right.
So like you couldn't show someone picking a lock, you couldn't show someone mixing a poison, anything that they could then go and do themselves. Which made me, obviously people know how to clean a bathroom, but but like watching that scene in Psycho just made me think like, this is a very long drawn out process of him hiding a body. And obviously he does get, justice is served in inverted commas at the end.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. I wonder how closely this film flirted with those rules.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, because they've definitely been having sex, because they're like getting dressed and they're in a hotel room. It's like, what else would they be doing?
Yeah, exactly. And Alfred Hitchcock very purposefully cast the man who played Sam, who was known for being like a kind of beefcake, because he wanted it to be like a sexy scene. And that's how the film starts. So yes, that's all I had to say about the film for now.
Great. Beautiful.
Thank you. So, as previously alluded to, the film begins with a lover's tryst between Marion, who is initially the main character, and her boyfriend Sam. So they're very obviously just engaged in coitus, and obviously, And we find out that he is paying alimony, and she is unmarried, never been married, very much wants to marry him, but he is worried that until his ex-wife gets remarried, he will still continue to be broke and won't be able to support her in that way. And then she then goes to her place of work, which I guess we can assume is like a real estate place.
Yeah. So.
And she has a chinwag with her colleague, who's quite an iconic character. She has some funny moans, and her boss comes in, and there's a man there who is buying a house with cash for his daughter.
Yeah.
And he's a bit sleazy, flirty with Marion.
Yeah.
And the boss, who kind of takes him into a back room to seal the deal, as it were. That sounds sexier than it is, to sign some paperwork, is a bit uncomfortable with having that much cash on the premises. So he asks Marion to take it straight to the bank. And she says, yes, I'll do that. She wraps it up in an envelope, puts it in a white handbag, which is relevant. And then says, I'm going to just go home after this. It's a Friday, I've got a bit of a headache. So she leaves with it. And the next we see of her, the package is lying on her bed, and she's changed into a black bra and a black handbag, which apparently symbolizes the naughtiness from kind of purity to evil. And she's obviously a bit torn about what to do with this money. But it seems like she's also kind of made up her mind.
Yeah, she's torn, but she has really.
But she's fine. So she packs a suitcase and she hops in a car.
Hits the road.
And we see her driving. And she drives for a long, long time. She's kind of playing over conversations in her head, and you kind of hear conversations that others are having.
Yeah.
While she's driving, so you hear them saying, because she stops at a zebra crossing, and she sees her boss, and her boss kind of smiles at her, and then kind of scowls when realizing that.
What about that headache?
Yeah, madam. So you then hear the conversations while it's focused on her, as she's driving, and the conversations are between her boss and her colleague, who are saying, no, she's not come in. I haven't heard from her. I'm sure, and then conversation with her sister, who hasn't heard from her, is starting to get a bit worried. And from the man who bought the house, saying, where's my money?
It's my money.
And she starts to get drowsy. It's nighttime. She's driving, so she pulls over and has a little nap. The nap turns into a
full-blown sleep.
A full-blown overnight sleep. And she is roused the following morn by a policeman.
A tap, tap, tap.
Who does the rat-a-tat on her window. And she's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I just meant to take a little nap. I didn't mean to sleep so long. I must rush. And he's a bit suspicious about her. Asked to see her license. She kind of surreptitiously removes it from her bag without taking out the big wad of cash. He follows her for a little while, and she starts to get a bit anxious. And then it's basically just a series of her making very silly decisions at this stage.
It is, yeah.
Because he's following her for a while, but then he takes a turn, and she thinks she's for the worse, and she thinks she takes a turn for the worse, and she thinks she's all in the clear now. But because he's got her license number, she drives into a used car place to trade her car for a new one and to pay with cash the excess of £700. However, she starts making this transaction when the policeman has found her and is kind of pulled up on the other side of the road and is just watching
the whole thing.
Yeah, so she makes the change. The man at the car dealership is kind of like, are you sure you don't want to take it for a test drive? This is a lot of money to pay in cash straight away. Do you want to think about it? But she zooms off, almost forgetting her bag and her coat. And then as she's driving off again, we hear the voice of the policeman having a conversation with the car dealers, who were just like, oh, she seemed in an awful hurry.
Yeah.
And
she didn't seem like a ramen.
Yeah. And then, so she continues to drive anyway. And then it's interesting actually, because that's such a big thing of it, but then we never actually hear from that policeman again, do we?
Even though it's such a huge mistake, that never actually comes up.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So then she's driving and the rain is super, super heavy. She can barely see, the cars in front of her. And she pulls into Bates Motel. So she turns up. This motel looks very, very empty because it's empty. And it's overlooked by this very beautiful kind of Gothic mansion that's kind of up on a little hill. And when she first looks up, she sees what looks like an old woman walking past the window, perhaps an old woman. And she beeps the horn to get the attention, and a very young, dashing, awkward, lithe young man comes trotting out, and they go into the office together. She gives a fake name. So she goes by Maria and uses the name Samuel, which is her boyfriend's first name. He takes her to room number 1.
Yeah.
Which is rather nice for a motel room, I think. I like the bird pictures.
Yeah.
And the bedspread. So she bundles the money inside of a newspaper that she picked up at the car dealership.
Yeah.
And kind of places it on the table at the side. He asks because she says she's very hungry, she's very tired, and he says there's a diner 10 miles away, and she doesn't seem like she can really be asked. So he says, I can bring you some food. Oh no, we can eat together if you want to join me.
And we can have some sandwiches and milk in the parlor.
Yeah, milk and sandwiches. So he goes back and he says, I'll come and get you when it's ready. And she kind of potters around and she hears him and his mother arguing in the house.
This
and
is so crazy. I was thinking because the house is so far away. It's so crystal clear how she can hear them.
Well, I mean, it's off the main highway, so maybe it's very quiet there and sound really travels downhill, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But the mother's saying like, you know, what is she? I can't remember what she's saying.
She's saying she's kind of implying she's a whore.
Yeah. And she's kind of sounds a bit jealous.
Yeah.
And like, she's not eating in my house, blah, blah, blah. So he comes down and brings the sandwich to her, and she's very understanding. He says that his mother is not feeling herself at the moment, and hasn't been for 10 years, maybe. And then they go into he's very uncomfortable about the idea of eating in her bedroom.
Yeah.
So they go into the little parlor that's behind the office, and it's filled with stuffed birds.
Burbs.
A big owl burb.
There's 2 owl burb.
And
the mother burb.
A raven burb.
Yeah. Burb.
And they talk about his hobby, which is taxidermy, stuffing birds. And he makes a comment about her eating like a bird. As she's nibbling on the dry looking sandwich next to the jug of milk. Disgusting. So she's eating the milky sandwiches like a bird.
Yeah.
And apparently there's lots of references to birds in this film, and people think that it was Alfred Hitchcock's way of saying my next film is called The Burbs.
Also The
Burbs. So Norman tells the story of kind of what happened to him. So his dad died when he was 5. His mum got with a new man who bought the motel. Is that right? So the motel used to be on the main highway.
Yes.
But they've since built a new highway so that they are a bit off the beaten track, which is why they very rarely have any visitors. So it becomes very, very clear that he's a bit of a hermit. They kind of talk about their hopes and dreams, and talking about how he talks about how I think we're all just trapped in our own kind of personal ways.
Yeah.
And during this conversation, she obviously has this kind of change of heart where she's like, okay, I can get myself out of this trouble now. I don't need to be in this situation. So her plan then changes, where she decides that the following day she's going to drive back to Phoenix, which is where she's come from, and try and resolve the situation. So hand over the money, although not all of it, because she paid 700 quid on her. Yeah, and she'll have paid $10 for a stay at the Bates EM. So then she goes into her room.
But it just before that, I don't know why she even says her own name, but she actually lets up her real name, which makes him realize that she's actually sort of hiding, and that maybe nobody's looking for her or something. So yeah, like basically he realizes that she's a bit more vulnerable than she seems.
Oh, I didn't really pick up on that. So she goes back into her room. She had previously done some sort of number crunching about
mathematics,
and she rips that up, flushes it down the toilet. The first ever flush on TV.
Nice.
And such a
flushing toilet scene,
groundbreaking moment. So she then goes into the shower, and you think it's the first shower she's ever had because she looks like she is living.
Yeah, she looks like she's having quite a sensual move.
Yes, a look of some glee on her face. A shadowy figure appears behind the curtain and pulls it back. It looks like they have sort of quite shapely, bulbous hair.
Yeah.
And then comes the kind of iconic stabbing scene, which even if you haven't seen the film, you will have seen this film. So apparently this scene, there are like 90 different like cuts in it because it happens so quickly. And she had a body double for part of it apparently, but for most of it she was just wearing kind of like nude illusion sort of stuff and things covering her nipples.
See the blurry nudity like a little bit, which is quite startling.
And there's one bit where you see, there's only one tiny quick flash where you see the knife make any contact with the flesh, and it's kind of on her belly.
Yeah.
And the way it was done apparently it was just a knife was very lightly pressed against the skin so that it made like a little impression, and then they play that bit backwards, or something like that. But yeah, it's a very iconic scene. And she at the end of this stabbing frenzy, she grabs the shower curtain, pulls it down, falls on the floor. Shortly later, see Norman, or hear Norman in the house seeing his mother, apparently going, "Oh, blood, 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 what have you done? Mother blood." And then he runs to room 1 and finds Marion's body.
Forlorn corpse.
Indeed. Forlorn of the dead. I was surprised, actually, that I think it's a really weird kind of, like, it goes against kind of horror convention in that you become invested in a protagonist, and an hour into a 2-hour film, they're killed. And all of a sudden, the focus switches onto who it turns out is the antagonist. Right. I think that's quite unusual, because I never felt as invested in the sister and the boyfriend as I was in the original.
That's true, yeah.
Woman.
You make a great point. I was thinking any other time I could think it's not really the same because it's like split like a few minutes, but Drew Barrymore on screen.
Well, I think there's a reasonable parallel to be drawn there, even though obviously there's about 59 minutes difference, is that Drew Barrymore was kind of marketed as being in the film,
right,
and isn't really the main part of it. And I guess it's the same sort of thing that just happens. She was the most well-known figure, or the only well-known figure, I think, in the film. And the interesting thing is, apparently, it's about half an hour into the film before we meet Norman Bates for the first time, and an hour before we meet the sister character, who then becomes kind of like the main driving force behind it after that. So I think it's funny the way it kind of plays with those sort of things. So we then watch a very kind of drawn out scene of of Norman kind of cleaning up. And I guess as a first-time viewer, you might be led to believe that he's kind of maybe cleaned up for his mother before, because he's very kind of efficient.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So cleans it, makes it spotless, wraps up her body in the shower curtain, puts her in the boot of her car, puts her bag and her all of
objet
d'art, including the newspaper with the money in, and he kind of makes the car drive into the. I don't understand cars well enough. Does he put something on a pedal? Does he put something on the pedal? He puts it in neutral and then pushes it into the gloopy puddle.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what a cars are.
Gloopy gloopy.
A week later is the next thing that we see. We're introduced to Marian's sister, Lila, who is very concerned about Marian's whereabouts. She's obviously heard from work that she's taken this money. She... Actually, I'm just thinking here. Oh, okay. I'm just trying to figure this out. So she confronts Sam saying, if you're in it together, I don't mind. It's none of my business, but I need her to tell me it's none of my business. I need to see that she's okay.
Yeah.
And while they're having this conversation in the kind of workshop thing that Sam works in.
Yeah. It's a shop.
Yeah. Oh, it's a shop. We're introduced to a character called Private Inspector Abagast. Flabbergasted Abagast. And because I'm thinking, who employed him? The man who gave the money. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So he's a private investigator, and he's like, maybe the three of us could be having this conversation. So they kind of work in cahoots because they all want to find
like an old squad.
Yeah, briefly. So Sam assumes that she was driving. She would have driven with the money towards him.
Yes.
So along that route, Abagast looks at all of the local motels and comes across the Bates Motel.
Yeah.
And he chats to Norman, who doesn't really do himself any favors here.
I don't see them.
So he says there's been no one there for a few weeks. Then he accidentally mentions that someone has been there recently. He looks at the picture, says he doesn't recognize her. He asks, Abagast asks to look at the book that she signed in on, sees a fake name, has a sample of her handwriting, sees that it's the same handwriting, shows the picture again, and he's like, oh yes, I did see her, but she looked different because she had wet hair. And it's wearing Yeah. And then he also remembers that he made her a sandwich and she ate it in the room with him, and that she was planning on going back home the next day.
Yeah.
Abagast then calls
the Snoopy gang.
Oh, because Norman makes some reference to Marion having interacted with his mother at some point.
Right. Yes. That's right.
And then Abagast is like, "Can I speak to your mother?" And he says, "No, she's very unwell.
She's unwell. She won't see you right now."
Yes. And there's an interesting line where he says, "I thought you said you lived alone," and he says, "Well, she's an invalid, so it's very much like living alone." And then, so he refuses to let Abagast see his mother for obvious reasons in hindsight. And Abagast rings Sam and Lila and says, I found that she definitely came to this motel. She said she was turning around, but I'm not satisfied that I've got all the information I need. So I'm going to go and try and speak to this invalid mother.
His mysterious mother.
Yes. And so he goes into after he's been on the phone, he says, "Oh, I'll phone back, or I'll be back within an hour once I've spoken to this mother." So he helps himself into the Bates house, and as he's approaching the top of the stairs, her bedroom door creaks open very, very slowly, and then all of a sudden, what appears to be Norman's mother comes barging out with a knife, stabs him at the top of the stairs, and he kind of very slowly steps back down the stairs.
We're flying back the stairs.
Yes. So Lila and Sam are concerned, especially Lila, when she doesn't hear from Abagast. So she convinced them that they should go to the motel. Sam says, he'll go, you wait here, blah, blah, blah. So Sam gets there, sees a figure in the house, who he thinks is Mrs. Bates, and he knocks, but she ignores.
She blocks.
So when she comes back, they decide to visit the local deputy sheriff, who they wake up. Because it's night time, and he has a very adorable wife.
His wife is hilarious.
It's very funny, lots of funny lines. And she, they explain what's happened. They explain why they haven't told the police about the money being stolen, because they feel like they could maybe convince her to give it back. And he says, okay, that explains why they've got a private investigator, but he plants a seed in their mind that maybe the private investigator's done a runner with the money. So they say, we can call Norman and see that everything's okay. But and they're like, oh, yes, because they say Arbogast went to visit his mother, and the deputy policeman is saying, well, they'll have trouble because she's been dead for 10 years. She's buried in the cemetery. And he tells them that his mother died in a murder-suicide, where she poisoned the man that she was living with, with strychnine, and then poisoned herself as well.
A terrible way.
That's the Agatha Christie poison, isn't it? I think it's strychnine that's always in Agatha Christie. Maybe it's not, but or maybe it's just I just know from true crime. But interestingly, actually, considering just to jump ahead, but considerably here, considering it's a. So we find out at the end, blah, blah, blah. No, obviously I will go back and recap, but so no. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Norman killed them. So Norman poisoned them. But it's funny because poison is always seen as being like basically that's how women murder people. Yeah. So anyway, we find out that they died. So they're like, and Sam's like, well, I saw a woman through the window. I'm not one for flights of fancy.
No.
So, no.
Beefcake, no flights of fancy.
And they're like, well, if she's alive, then who's buried in the cemetery? Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun.
So, the sheriff calls Norman. Norman, just says exactly what he told the police.
Yeah.
The private investigator, rather. Follow. And then Lila and Sam decide to drive to the motel because they think there's more to it. Norman carries his mother with her great protestations down to the fruit cellar, where she says, what does she say? She says, you're not putting me in the fruit cellar. You think I'm fruity.
Yeah.
And she also says, you've put me in there before, which comes back around again. So Sam and Lila arrive at the motel, and they pretend to be a married couple.
They do.
So they are taken to room 10. They know from Arbogast, from when he rang earlier, that Marion was in room 1. So they hatch a little plan to go a snooping. And a snooping they do. So they have a look around the room. The only thing they find of any interest is a tiny bit of shredded paper that didn't successfully flush, which gives them enough knowledge to know that she'd written something to do with the money.
I think it's funny because it's like such a tiny scrap of paper. She's like, oh, it says 40,000 minus an amount here.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, she writes with a mini pen.
Yeah.
So they then assume that Norman must have somehow got the money from her, because why else would a man want to live in this failing business? He must have tried to get money so he could buy a new motel or he could move away or something. Yeah. That's their theory anyway. So they come up with a plan that Sam will distract Norman by saying that Lila is sleeping while she goes into the house to have a look around. So she goes and pootles around the upstairs rooms. Mrs. Bates.
Yeah.
Which it's such a beautiful house, isn't it? I love it. And then Sam is getting increasingly meaner to Norman.
Yeah, so he's like bullying him. But it's also like kind of a bit flirty, I think.
It is a bit, but I think it's Norman's like kind of a natural kind of like effeminacy that, and yeah, and he always kind of like a little uncomfortable laugh when he's being like confronted about something. He's just got such a I love him.
Yeah,
I love him. He's got beautiful little dimples, and that little muscle that twitches on his like kind of on his jawline. Yeah. Oh. Who?
Fox Mulder.
Oh, I thought you said it was called a fox molder. Oh, you mean the fox molder muscle? Yes, it always twitches when he's excited. Oh, is that your fox molder twitching, or are you just happy to see me?
You're agitated by Fox Mulder.
He's come down with a terrible case of the fox molder twitches. So, yeah, I also think he's got like such a kind of like a kind of wiry frame compared to Sam.
Yeah,
That there is a weird kind of like bullying kind of dynamic to it.
Yeah.
And also you do feel sorry for Norman Bates almost the whole way through.
Yeah, I wonder if everyone does, or it's just because we're a bit twisted.
Well, I think you're supposed to, because you're supposed to think that he is kind of at the behest of his domineering mother.
Murders.
Yeah. And that he's just kind of like desperately trying to clean up after her mess. So, yeah, I think you are supposed to. And also, so actually, here's another thing. In the book of the same name, the character of Norman was kind of middle-aged, very unappealing looking, and not very pleasant. And that was one of the main changes, was to make him like very sympathetic and likable by casting someone that was only in his 20s, who was very, very nice to look at, and who was actually really kind of like awkward and like
cute.
Yeah. So he's kind of like getting quite kind of aggressive with him, thinking that he's taken the money. Norman, I think, is especially confused because he actually doesn't know anything about the money, does he?
No, he doesn't know.
No. And then he's just like, oh my God, where's Lila? Because he realizes that this is a setup so that she could go and confront the mother.
Yeah, because he mentioned something about the mum, and he's like, what?
Yeah. So he manages to bash Sam over the head with a little vase of some sort. And runs towards the house. Lila sees him approaching and retreats down the stairs to the fruity cellar. And then as she's about to tiptoe out and leave once he passes, she notices, what does she see through the door?
I think she just sees their stuff, and so probably just gets an idea that there might be something down there.
Yeah, so she, or maybe there's a light on or something, I don't know, it's not clear. But she goes into there, and then she sees sitting in the corner an old woman with her back to her. And this is another scene that you may well have seen, even if you haven't seen the film. Scene, such as this iconicity. And she goes up to her, she puts a hand on her shoulder. The woman spins round, and it turns out that it's actually just a sort of decaying skeleton.
Reveal!
With hair and a dress.
Yeah.
Stunning. And she screams, as you might.
It knocks the light bulb and it goes all flying all over the place.
And then all of a sudden we see Norman dressed as his mother, kind of maniacally coming towards her with a knife. Yeah. But Sam, who's obviously come round from his vase head gate, grabs him from behind, kind of wrestles him down to the ground. And then we end in a police station.
Yeah.
Where he wouldn't speak to any of the police there, but he speaks to the psychiatrist. This scene I really didn't like. This end scene.
No, I think he's really cheesy, the psychiatrist.
It is. It feels like, you know, like in a really kind of cheesy murder mystery, it ends with everyone gathered around and says, "This is how it was done." Yeah. I think it's called. Is it the exposition? Is that what it's called? So, and I think in this, it's to explain, to make it really, really crystal clear what happened. And maybe in response to the Hays Code, because apparently Alfred Hitchcock himself didn't like this scene, but felt obliged to put it in to explain what had happened, because it would have been really good if it ended without that scene and just...
Oh, I see, without any of the backstory and explanation.
Because, did you really need the backstory? Yeah. Yeah, well, oh, you are. Nosy Nora. So the only additional things that we find out that we didn't already know, or that we couldn't have kind of ascertained with a little bit of creative guesswork, is that he killed his mother and his mother's lover, and the fact that he had split personalities, which isn't it. They don't use split personalities, but they also don't use dissociative identity disorder, because I don't think that would have been named as such at the time.
No.
But I feel like that whole last scene is basically saying their way of saying he definitely isn't a transvestite. Because that's very much what and he's saying, no, he's not a transvestite. He is his mother. Like
that's probably the main bit. I feel like there's other stuff in it that's useful. Like, well, maybe not actually.
Yeah, I think if that scene was gone, and the next scene that we saw after that was him sat in the cell, which is how it ends, he asks for a blanket, and we hear the mother's voice speaking over the top, and it sounds like the mother wants the police to think that it was him and not her.
Yeah.
So he's still thinking as his mother.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that stops this from being a film about a trans man who murders.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't. It's not that he identifies as woman. It's that he believes that he is his mother, which is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And then it ends with him kind of like staring at the camera in quite a sort of greedy way, and then it kind of fades out to show his face kind of superimposed with the mother's face very briefly. Did you not see that? Like the skull face.
Yeah.
And then we see the car being pulled up out of the sludge as the credits begin to roll.
You do.
Let's talk about representation.
Yeah.
So women.
Don't think it's particularly good for women. Is it? Well, he's just this quite like strong, kind of cool character, and I'm saying like her like stealing all the money is quite cool.
It is, and also she, I guess, in terms of like the morality of the time, she also,
it's like a bit of a badass.
But she realized, oh, excuse me, but she realized. We're doing this in a heat wave.
Yeah.
You have to forgive us. We're a little out of sorts and burpy. Yeah, stinky, disgusting, sweltering, and burpy. And demented. So she has a kind of her own little redeeming arc, and I've read actually that her that the shower is supposed to represent, and like her kind of glee in the shower is supposed to represent her like kind of cleansing,
washing away the guilt.
Yeah.
That's probably why she's so ecstatic.
Yeah, and her change from a white bra to a black bra, and then from keeping the money in a white bag to a black bag, is supposed to signify her going from purity to kind of darkness. And then at the end, she's kind of cleansing. She's about to make the right decision. And then she's murdered.
Yeah.
I don't think this passes the Bechdel test though, because the only conversation we see between women, really is Marion and her colleague at the beginning.
I wonder actually with the Bechdel test whether it counts if there's like a mixture of men.
Well, they do have a conversation without the men.
Yeah.
But
no, I was just thinking about the sheriff's wife, but that doesn't really like.
Yeah, she like, and I'm not sure her or the colleague have a name either. Actually,
no.
So yeah, it's not great for women.
No.
It's even worse for people of color. It's a completely white film.
It is.
But again, this might be due to the Hays Code, or it might be to do with just racism. Queer representation.
It's not. Well, it depends whether you're doing like queer in the queer theory sort of way, or queer as in like LGBT representation. Yeah, I mean, like, him dressing up as his mother isn't really positive representation.
But is it any kind of representation? Because it's actually just it's a kind of symptom of his, or a manifestation of his illness, rather than. But maybe that does then imply that people who are trans are inherently mentally ill or evil. So I don't know.
And also, the fact that he is dressing up as a woman to kill people does feed into that kind of murderous trans narrative.
I wonder if it's a more interesting film to read him as gay.
Right.
And I don't know if I just wanted to read him as gay because I fancied him. But it's really, really interesting because I don't think it's not super noticeable how kind of like fey and like kind of soft he is until he's contrasted with Sam.
Yeah.
Who is like kind of like a brutish beefcake.
Yeah.
Who kind of uses his fists instead of his words and kind of is like physically quite imposing compared to him, who's kind of like a little beanpole.
And there's also kind of like weird close-up pictures, like images of like his face, and his eyelashes definitely look like they put some kind of mascara on him or something to accentuate
for sure.
his like eyelashiness and his like doe-eyed kind of like coquettish feminine nature. Yeah.
Because I'm also wondering whether part of the reason to cast someone who was very kind of like beautiful and young was because maybe Hitchcock felt that he'd make a more convincing woman rather than because he wanted him to be more sympathetic.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Because, I mean, you don't need to think of that in the context of the film because anytime you see him before the big reveal, it's just all in shadow and you don't really see him. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I guess we'll never know.
No. So I think maybe it's interesting to think about disability in this context because essentially we're introduced to two people superficially who potentially have disabilities. I'm not sure if a mental disorder like dissociative identity disorder counts as a disability. It probably does.
Yeah, I think mental illness is counted under disability.
So we've got that, and in which case this is a dreadful portrayal because, and also the character that it was based on, Ed Gein, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And, it's very well documented that schizophrenic people and people with dissociative identity disorder aren't all murderers. But it just thinks, I feel like maybe the legacy of this film is more around the idea of this kind of split personality thing rather than around the kind of murderous cross-dresser thing. So I'm thinking about, I feel like I'm sure there are loads of examples. The only examples I can think of off the top of my head is the character from Split, the M. Night Shyamalan one. He has dissociative identity disorder. And there was also a recent episode of Inside Number 9 where someone had dissociative identity disorder and was on death row for, and was murderous and that sort of thing.
Actually, I think weirdly the first portrayal, I've seen this film, it's actually quite good. Maybe we should watch it sometime. Split personality, as they used to call it, was The Three Faces of Eve, and that's a 1957 film with a woman who has distinct personalities that kind of appear, and apparently it's based on a real woman, a case of a real woman who had and it started in her because she was forced to kiss the corpse of one of her relatives at a funeral.
What is that? What happened in real life?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Like a little girl, she was like.
So, does dissociative identity disorder then come from trauma?
It's like a split to escape the reality of sort of trauma, essentially, so that you create a new personality that can deal with or isn't associated with the original.
Which I guess Norman Bates has done in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess aside from that more obvious example, and the other example is the mother as we got first introduced to her, and they used the word invalid, which probably wouldn't be used now.
No.
And yeah, I mean, it's not a positive portrayal of either of them because, yeah. So, I mean, as far as representation goes, this film is pretty bad all around. But also, it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
So yes, not great on representation. No. Shall we do the awards?
Sure thing.
Well, that was one of our most beautifully haunting. So, who was your best character?
My favorite character was the gossipy sheriff's wife, and one of the favorite things she says is we're just talking about helping with the funeral arrangements. She's like, what did she say? She says, "I'm helping out the dress."
Periwinkle blue. She actually, one of her lines was one of my lols moments. But my favorite character was the sad stuffed rabbit on the little child's bed in the bedroom.
Yeah,
that was my favorite character.
I actually realized that was also my most hilarious line. Was
it a spoiler alert? I have two lols moments.
Oh, yeah.
So one of them was when she was like, because that same character, she was so kind of joyously positive, even though everything that everyone was talking about was really bleak. And she wanted them to come back for dinner after they'd been at church.
Oh, yeah.
And she was, and her husband was saying, you should report this to the police as a missing person case and as theft, and it'll be dealt with more. And she says, well, you can come and have dinner and do the reporting there. That'll make it nicer.
Yeah.
But I also really liked it when her colleague, who's another good character, she had some good lines at the beginning, where she was just like, he was flirting with you. He must have seen my wedding ring. Yeah. What did you have for spoopiest moment?
Well, I had a bit where I was like, which isn't spoopy. It was the bit where the sister's in the house snooping and Norman's running up the stairs towards the house. I was like,
oh yeah.
This is not spooky, but I was like,
yeah, I think with a lot of old films, it's difficult to know what is scary and what's not because we're watching it through very jaded eyes of people who've seen much more shocking horrors since then.
Yeah.
And also we're kind of conditioned to be used to jump scares.
Yeah. Because I imagine the reveal of the corpse would have been quite shocking those days.
Yeah. I guess also one of the bit where I was going to say, what's his name? Abagast.
Yes, Abagast.
When Abagast walks up the stairs, and Norman, as the mother, bursts out of the bedroom with the knife, that reminded me a little bit of the scene in The Exorcist 3, where the nun comes, but that is scarier.
Yeah.
But it had the same. Maybe that would have been quite a jumpy moment.
Yeah.
Where, on original viewing.
Yeah.
Best death seems yeah, it's iconic. Yeah, it really is. And then the worst death, I guess, by proxy, because it's the only other death we see, isn't it? Is the oh God, I'm sorry. It's so hot. So hot and sneezy. I feel like I'm coming undone. The worst death, I guess, by proxy, is the sweat in your eye, babes. How I'm on fire. Is flabbergasted toppling. I did like that death though, but compared to the other one,
it's a bit silly. The kind of way that he flies downstairs. I'm sure it's meant to be some kind of way of doing. Because I know that in the remake of the Psycho, they actually recreated that. The way that he fell down the stairs is the same. like in terms of the way that it's like weird, like flying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's like an important scene.
Yeah, I just like the kind of that it kind of stays on his face, and you're only really seeing his reaction to it.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I think it's another example of a creative way around not showing the person doing the killing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting if we think back to Sleepaway Camp, where they never show the person that's doing the killing, and we only ever see the aftermath. I guess that's another way around it. But what do you think is the queerest moment?
Well, I'm gonna just rule out Norman and dress. But well, and I'm putting a queer reading on this because I actually thought it was like kind of hot. Was when Sam is in the office with Norman, like questioning him. I think it's a kind of weird, like sexy, flirty way. I don't know whether it's because Sam's a bit of a flat actor against Norman, who's kind of like fancier. But it's just like he's like, you're alone here, aren't you? Must drive you crazy. You'd do anything to get away, wouldn't you? And he's like leaning into the counter, and his hands like all the way across the counter, like near.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just well, yeah.
But also, I think like as kind of fellow femmes, like I feel like that's how straight men try and intimidate, like kind of femme, like people who appear to be men.
Yeah. But also the only way they know how to interact with someone who's
like pretty is to be like, yeah. And also, I feel like anyone who's had any sort of homophobia or transphobia knows how closely violence and like lust are kind of linked. Yeah, I didn't really have a queerest moment. I think there are some very kind of camp moments.
Yeah.
And I think Norman Bates in general as a character, not in his mother's clothes, but out of it, is kind of a queer moment in of itself. I think, especially thinking about kind of some tropes around like gay men, which is like kind of unhealthily attached to their mother, a loner, kind of a very unusual hobby, you know, like he's got these kind of, and then there's also his kind of like feyness and his kind of like softness and the way he walks up the stairs, you know, kind of wiggling his hips
and his little sandwiches.
His little milky sandwiches, his little beautiful dimples, and his twitching fox Mulder. So this seems like a silly last award to mention, given how emphatic we've been about our love for him. But who is the sexiest character? Question mark. Norman.
When I started watching, I'd actually forgotten all about Sam in terms of what he looked like, and I was like, oh, maybe Sam's going to be the sexiest character. But yeah, when Norman arrives, you're like, ooh,
yeah. I think it's really refreshing in a way to see a film, especially an old film, where we see someone who is kind of like a man who isn't like crushingly masculine.
Yeah.
And he is presented as a very sympathetic character almost all throughout, but especially in that first meeting with Marion, he's like adorable. Like he's so soft and gentle, like a little bit creepy maybe, just because he's weird and he spends a lot of time on his own, but but like he's very like pretty and soft, and you never really see that.
I think he seems quite charismatic in a way as well, even though he's quite awkward. He has like his little cute smile. And it's like, it's quite infectious. But now I'm thinking actually as well, given the time, maybe it was the kind of case of that queer coding the villain sort of vibe, where it's like making the creepy weirdo like the killer.
Yeah, but I think also he kind of breaks that mold a little bit, because he's not like faggy, is he? He's not like camp. He's just a bit soft, which I mean, it's the same sort of thing. But
time whether people would have found that jarring, like and thought, ugh.
Yeah, he's not a real man.
Yeah,
especially because there's a bit where is it Flabbergast that says it? That says I'm not meaning to question your manhood or something, as if he's being quite defensive.
I don't know. It's interesting, I guess.
But it is also stated at the end in that weird kind of exposition with the psychiatrist that he was attracted to her, which is why the mother was jealous in inverted commas. So he might be queer coded, but for all intents and purposes, he's presented as a straight man.
I mean, that's always the way, though, in like the olden days. Like, although they're just queer coded, they're not actually queer.
Yeah, but I think the queer coded characters are often kind of like asexual
That's
seeming,
true.
like not necessarily. They're kind of seen as like sexless almost.
Yeah.
But like there is chemistry between him and Marion. Like you can feel it. Oh, you can feel it in your Fox Mulder. So that's the awards. Well done to all of the winners.
Yeah.
How many pumpkins are you going to?
Interesting. I think the problem is becoming with our system that all the films we're watching are really good.
Well, but also I feel like we shouldn't feel like we're horror fans. Of course, we love all the films. Like that's why we watch them all.
So I think I'm gonna give it a 4 pumpkins. Actually,
I think I'm going to give it a 4.5.
is it?
I know. I didn't think I'd be more generous than you, but I am. Apart from
Well, you
Sleepaway.
can't get really less generous than 4.5 instead of 5.
Any less generous?
Well, I mean, like you saying, "Oh, I didn't know you'd be so stingy."
Well, I mean, it's just such an iconic film, and I think sometimes like when you watch really iconic horror films, especially because horror as a genre dates worse than most genres. I think. I think sometimes you rewatch a classic and you're just like, it's not as good as I remember it being. But like Psycho stands up, like it's a brilliant film. It's such a good film. I think it's almost a 5 pumpkin for me. I'd say the biggest downfall, obviously, it's not a film that, you know, is waving the flag for any minorities, is it? But for me, the biggest downside is that exposition scene at the end. I think it kind of really takes you out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we don't need this explained to us. Like, I've kind of understood enough.
Right.
And I think that stops it from being like an absolutely mwah film.
Mwah.
But yeah, 4.5 pumpkins ain't bad.
It ain't bad. Time for the spooky
day.
I thought it was only fitting that I'd find some kind of spooky motel story.
Mm-hmm.
Originally I was going to talk about Ed Gein, but that seemed too on the nose. So instead, for this episode, I found lonely women have been visiting this Florida motel to meet the orgasm ghost.
Was it Norman Bates? Same.
I've never heard of this website, but according to this website, Backpackerverse, they've been contacted by dozens of women with reports about their sexy ghost experience in this particular room in the Amber Tides Motel in Clearwater Beach, Florida. My favorite bit on this hostel as well is that they've obviously been contacted by the motel to say, can you also say that it's a lovely place to stay? Because there's a little correction straight after it. Like, and it's also very close to the beach and there's lovely amenities.
You had me at sexy ghost.
So the website decided to follow up with the original report from a woman called Diana. But that's not actually her name because they don't want her husband to find out what she's been up to.
Infidelity.
So the rest is now told from the perspective of Diana, aka
aka adulteress.
Yes. Ghost adulteress. I'm going to try and do this in an accent, but I might stop halfway through.
Sure.
I'm so embarrassed, but I need to share this story. My husband is always away at work, and when he's home, he's thinking about work. My libido has been going crazy.
I love Diana.
I guess I'm just at that age. Diana says in a shy, nervous voice.
She doesn't. She sounds quite bold.
Basically, one of my girlfriends told me about this motel.
She sounds very much like I needed a break from the plantation.
Don't give away a secret identity.
Oh, what? Oh, when she was literally a slave owner going to get her fucking jollies off in a motel. Actually, I'm not sure there was an overlap between motels and the slave trade in the US, but who knows?
Anyway, so basically one of my girlfriends told me about this motel in Florida called Underpass, and I needed a little bit of a vacation anyways, so of course I stayed there. She told me there was a certain room that was haunted. I'm into that shit, so I figured, why not? But it's not haunted by a normal ghost.
No, ma'am.
It's haunted by some kind of intense, overpowering sexual energy. I whispered coyly. I had a few glasses of wine and I'm now way to the room. I even on one of those sleazy videos on the TV. Just calm yourself right down because I'm not going into any details. But let's just say my hands started wandering.
Is this just an elaborate way of saying she had a wank party? She was watching some porn in a motel.
Well,
ma'am, I do think thou dost protest too much.
The lights went out on their own, and I could feel the bed starting to tremble.
The bits?
The bed. The bed.
Oh, the bed.
But it wasn't like a shake or a vibration like those cone-operated beds. It was more like the bed was breathing. It was in sync with me. I started to feel things I've never felt before. It was kind of like I was being softly caressed by 1,000 hands. But it was like my entire body became so sensitive to the touch. It was like my body was being pleased. It was so overwhelming. Oh, shut up.
Yes, otherwise your accent has been very consistent up to this point.
This isn't some kind of metaphor you're reading a filthy romance novel. It literally felt like there were hands all over my body. And no matter where they touched, I felt waves of pleasure. You know, like when you're with a guy who just really knows what he's doing in that one spot. Multiply it by your entire body. That's what I was feeling.
I love that she said she wasn't going to go into detail.
I've had another thing. Suddenly I heard lightning outside. It started pouring rain. I was so into the moment. It felt like I sunk into the bed and I was surrounded by nothing but pure pleasure. I tried to open my eyes to get back to reality, but I couldn't. I wasn't even a human entity anymore. I was in another world. I lost control of my senses. The storm raged on, and I swear to God I heard someone whisper in my ear, but I don't know what.
You're starting to sound like an evangelical preacher.
I swear to God. Anyway, it didn't matter. It put me over the edge. I felt like I was tied to the bed by energy, completely submissive. I'm a control freak, but I wasn't afraid. I just went with it. It felt right. And then it just stopped. Now I was able to see again. My senses were returning as I lay in the bed, completely exhausted and honestly a little afraid of what just happened. I hate not being completely in control. It's rare for me to even have a few glasses of wine. But it was okay. I never felt anything close to like that in my life. Oh my God. Anyways, I guess my friends weren't lying, right? There's something about that room. I had to promise not to tell which room it was, because it's already been spreading about word of mouth. As soon as any woman hears about this experience, she wants it for herself. And the crazy thing is that my friend and I had the same time there. I said the women who told her about it. I slept like a log that night.
I bet she did. All them 1,000 fingers poking and prodding at her.
Oh my God. I haven't got such a peaceful rest, ever. On my way out the next morning, I noticed the housekeeper looking at me with that knowing look on her face. She knew exactly what happened and shot me a grin. She seemed eager to get into the room. So that's Diana. She's gone now, but she was there.
It was. I felt like I wasn't even a human entity anymore, and she was touching me with her 1,000 fingers. Thanks for taking us there. So essentially, this is just a room that a series of very sexually unsatisfied Southern belles queue up to go for a nice, relaxing wank, a glass of wine, a porny VHS.
Yeah, the hands will start to wander.
Is it called the Masturbate Hotel?
Yeah.
Oh, I know it.
Yes. But yeah, so who knows whether people still go there and have lady wanks, but Cowley is quite experienced.
Seems so. I might book in.
Every room.
If you're enjoying the